What we have here is an 8-game, 4-system, 3-round, single elimination tournament style run and gun competition. The games include Contra for the NES, Guerrilla War for the NES, Midnight Resistance for the Sega Genesis, Gunstar Heroes for the Sega Genesis, Contra 3 for the SNES, Metal Slug for the Neo Geo, Mercs for the Sega Genesis, and Shock Troopers, which I'm counting as a Neo Geo release. The judgment criteria: gameplay and level design, basic and boss enemies, art and sound design, and quality of life features. Although many, but not all of the games are multiplayer, looking at you Mercs, this competition focuses on the single player experience. And without further ado, let's run and gun. Round 1, Match 1, Contra vs Guerrilla War. Regarding gameplay and level design, Contra has gameplay that thrives in the easy-to-grasp controls department. You aim, you jump, you duck, you run, you shoot in all directions. You have one primary weapon at a time, and you don't have to reload, and you don't have an alternate attack. The simplicity of the controls allows you to dive right in, but surprisingly, they don't make the game feel overly simple as you progress. It is one hit and you're dead, so you need to be very careful of any and all enemies and incoming fire. Contra has a variety of guns, including the machine gun, spread gun, flamethrower, and laser gun. The weapon upgrade items are plentiful, and each weapon feels appropriately different and fits into each stage strategically. If you lose a life, you also lose your weapon upgrade, which can make some sections extremely challenging. Each of Contra's 8 stages toss in a little something different that opens up your tactical choices. The stages aren't solely just a change of setting. The side-scrolling stages often include different tiers of platforms to run across. Enemies are placed strategically on the tiers, as are weapon upgrades, and which tier you decide to take affects how you should proceed. Later side-scrolling stages apply more intentional pattern recognition, like the Energy Zone, where you dodge flame bursts like you're Sean Connery in The Rock. The Hangar has you avoiding sharp spike clamps that drop down while also preparing for spiked walls to rise that prevent forward movement. Contra also tosses in over-the-shoulder stages where you strafe left and right to take out sensors that allow you to proceed forward to the next room. These stages were mind-bending when I was a kid, and are still very cool today. Strategy once again comes into play by having you decide to take out weapons that are firing at you first, or just aiming to destroy the sensor, which clears that section. Guerrilla War also follows a simple controls path, but from a top-down viewpoint. You move in all directions, have a primary fire, and have a grenade attack. There's no jumping or crouching down here. Guerrilla War is also a one-hit death run and gun. For weapons, Guerrilla War has multiple guns, including your standard machine gun, flamethrower, rocket launcher, spread shot, triple shot torpedo, grenades, a screen-clearing grenade, and a screen-clearing smart bomb. The weapon variety is strong, and grenades open up a way to clear groups of enemies at a time. Additionally, some of your weapons don't go across the entire screen, while some do. This adds some strategy to which weapon you want to use. Enemies also have these limitations, so it's a plus for fairness. The weapons are different, but the high volume of enemies sometimes takes away from being able to appreciate one weapon over another. There are 10 stages in total. Each stage is generally set up very similarly to the others, whereas Contra varied up the level design greatly. Guerrilla War varies things up more subtly by adjusting the width of the playfield you're on and adjusting the amount of obstacles within that playfield. Strategy comes from choosing proper field position and using obstacles to protect you from incoming fire. There's an additional layer of strategy to this, as some walls and objects in the game are destructible, and deciding when to break certain objects is important. Guerrilla War also lets you jump into a tank for some extra protection. The top-down view still holds, and the overall gameplay is still similar, but you feel a little more extra powered in these sections, and it varies things up so the game doesn't get stale. Additionally, Guerrilla War introduces the goal of rescuing stationary hostages, which adds another layer of strategy to your gameplay, as you must decide to clear the field of some enemies or go right for the rescue. Hostages die from friendly fire, so this drastically alters how you play whenever they're on screen. The one major gameplay variant of Guerrilla War comes from a stage where you ride in a rail car and have to quickly lasso female hostages to save them. I don't know if this was a pervy take on Indiana Jones, or a legit attempt at creating drama, but the stage caught me completely off guard and had me laughing at the utterly ridiculous notion throughout the entire stage. Definitely a level to remember. As much as I loved lassoing in female hostages into my rail car, Contra is the gameplay victor here. The controls feel tight and every level feels purposefully built for the player to apply strategy and know-how in order to succeed. Guerrilla War's gameplay is enjoyable, but its challenges come from more overwhelming numbers and saving hostages. The level designs are less creative than Contra's as well, so Contra takes the win here. Regarding basic enemies and bosses, Contra's basic enemies include various humanoid robots and mechanical enemies. Enemies vary from those that run at you, those that shoot at you, and the stationary mechanical enemies. Later stages introduce aliens. Your basic enemy variety is actually on the relatively low side and is somewhat repetitive. Enemies are found throughout the stages and multiple can be on screen at once, but the screen is never overcrowded with enemies. There's always a feeling that each enemy is intentionally there to make you think tactically. Bosses, on the other hand, are big and bad in the best of ways. From giant walls that attack, to Dagra, the spiked attack vehicle, the Goldolf, the troop-deploying spaceship, the Guerrilla, the Mercs, the Java the alien-inspired chestburster, and even the giant heart Gomaramos King. The bosses are spectacles with various patterns to analyze. The end of each level feels appropriately climactic. Guerrilla War's enemies include a variety of foot soldiers armed with rifles or even rocket launchers, tanks of various sizes, helicopters, and more. Basic enemy variety here is superior compared to Contra's more limited set. Basic enemies sometimes swarm the screen, which can be impressive from an action perspective, but it also can feel cheap as there are sometimes too much to handle without dying, no matter your strategy. Slowdown also pops its ugly head up at times too because of this. The sheer amount of enemies doesn't really connect well to hostage rescue either. Generally, you need to constantly shoot to stay alive. If you're going to stay alive, you're probably going to wipe out a wealth of hostages. The game either needed to ease up on some enemy numbers or work the hostage rescue thing differently to really make that function well. And oh yeah, death by chicken is apparently a thing, so be careful at your next trip to KFC. Bosses are also large and in charge in Guerrilla War and include tanks, a helicopter, a submarine turret, and a train, among others. The end boss, the leader, involves attacking not only him but his house, which also fights you, as he launches an insane arsenal at you. Guerrilla War's bosses lean toward the more realistic side for the most part, but they still offer a solid end-of-stage climax. Guerrilla War has a stronger roster of regular enemies over Contra, but its focus on overwhelming numbers takes away from some of the strategy. Additionally, the hardware at the time could not handle the sheer number of enemies, which resulted in slowdown. The bosses, though, are where Contra just leaps beyond Guerrilla War. Guerrilla War's bosses feel slightly uninspired by being more reality-based, but the fights themselves focused on dodging incoming fire over developing a strategy for the boss. Not that either take is inherently right or wrong, but Contra's bosses just felt like more of an event, and learning the strategy to take them on was part of the fun. Regarding artistic and sound design, Contra uses big sprites and strong and bright colors to keep the on-screen art looking fresh. Contra won't pass as a new game, but its art design surprisingly holds up quite well because of the bigger sprites and more poignant colors. Each of Contra's stages have a unique art design, from the jungle, to the waterfall, to indoor industrial areas, to an alien themed stage. There's little feeling of repetition as the colors and details change up quite a bit. Stages have moving water, blinking lights, etc. also to make them feel alive. Enemies in Contra also stand out with detail, especially when it comes to the bosses. Bosses are very intricately detailed and sometimes have moving parts. Each boss battle looks phenomenal, with bosses being imposing on looks alone. Java looks imposing and opens its jaws to release more enemies while also looking like it wants to snack on you. It's the attention to the details here, the animations, it's just exemplary. Contra's music is fast-paced, enjoyable, and very much suits the game. The sound effects are also very good considering the original hardware limitations. Guns sound great, as do explosions. Guerrilla War went for a more subdued use of color. Each stage has plenty of details to make it feel unique, and the destructible environments are definitely a nice touch. Guerrilla War also has various stages that include a jungle, city, sewer, and even one on top of a submarine. The variety and details are strong, but the subdued colors do limit how different each stage feels. There really aren't stage animations to speak of, water is still and nothing lights up. I'm guessing hardware power was spent on enemy volume. Guerrilla War goes with larger sprites than normal for its bosses, but doesn't focus on adding those special touches that really make art design stand out. The music in Guerrilla War is somewhat catchy and pretty enjoyable throughout the game. The music is fast-paced and suits the fast action of the game. Likewise, the sound effects are good for the time period it came from. The weapons make different sounds, and explosions sound powerful. Contra's artistic design is a strong standout. The vibrant colors and nearly 3D look of the over-the-shoulder levels, along with the extremely strong boss design, make a very compelling case for victory. Guerrilla War feels more acceptable compared to Contra, which feels extraordinary. The music design of both games is probably a tie, but the sound effects from Contra have a slight edge over Guerrilla War, as the weapons just sound slightly better. Contra takes the art and sound design win here. Regarding the quality of life features for both games, Contra's difficulty is on the challenging side. Generally, hits don't feel cheap, but if you choose to play the game without any codes, bless your heart. While hits are avoidable, memorization and experience are necessary parts of survival here, and it would take a highly skilled player to get through. There are no save points or level passwords in Contra. You're given 3 lives and 3 continues to start, and if you don't know what you're doing and aren't familiar with the level designs, you'll never make it to the end. Also, this is a game that needs to be completed in a single sitting because of the lack of save points. For codes, Contra is home to probably the most well-known code in existence, the Konami code. This code gives you 30 lives instead of 3 and drastically transforms the game into something much more approachable. With the Konami code, Contra can be beaten by the average player in less than 45 minutes. Without the code, you better quit your day job. Guerrilla War is also extremely difficult. The sheer volume of incoming fire makes survival pretty much impossible, no matter the skill level. Some hits can feel cheap because the screen is just covered in gunfire and you have no way to avoid it. Memorization is less of a key here. Luck is probably a better friend to have. Guerrilla War does not have any save points or level passwords. You are given 3 lives and unlimited continues. Game is intended to be beaten in a single sitting, and with unlimited continues, which respawns you exactly at where you died, it's well within the acceptable range to beat the game in a sitting, as it takes about an hour. For codes, there is the level select code, which does add to the quality of life feature set should you have to turn the game off for any reason. Contra feels more fair with difficulty, as it feels like skill will get you through the game, compared to luck with Guerrilla War. Guerrilla War, however, was designed as more forgiving with continues, and even if Contra's Konami code is used, there's still a threat of having to restart the game from the beginning should you die over 90 times before the end. Crazier things have happened. Guerrilla War does have a 1-up with a code for level select though, which does make it more accessible in a busy life. The quality of life feature set winner here is Guerrilla War, but just by a slim margin. Overall, Guerrilla War is a fun playthrough and a worthwhile experience should you never have played it. Its constant action is fun to experience, but in the long run, Contra's balanced gameplay, subtle application of strategies, and supreme boss design still delight the most. Contra advances to round 2. Round 1, Match 2, Mercs vs. Shock Troopers. Mercs was based on an arcade game and came to the Sega Genesis with an arcade port, and also included a highly tweaked original version. For the purposes of this comparison, I'll be focusing on the arcade port. Regarding gameplay and level design, Mercs has a simple control scheme that is easy to pick up and understand. You can turn in 360 degrees, shoot your primary weapon, or launch a Mega Crash Bomb, which is a strong screen attacking, but not screen clearing, weapon. You have a life gauge as opposed to constant single hit death. You're able to pick up various health items as well as different weapons. Mercs has a total of 7 levels. The levels vary with length, with earlier levels being able to be knocked out in less than 2 minutes, and later levels generally being longer and having more enemies. The stages use a combination of stable and destructible items and structures. The amount of destructible structures is actually impressive for an early 90s Genesis game. The stages sometimes force you to fight enemies before progressing, but there are times when you can just avoid enemies and move on forward. You do have to often learn from dying, as which enemies you can bypass isn't necessarily apparent until you try, fail, and get blown to smithereens by a tank. Choosing to stay and fight is always an option, but this can be costly as enemies endlessly respawn and will continually come after you. And you're gonna need that health bar, because the sheer volume of projectiles and enemies coming your way will have you wish for Neo from the Matrix-like powers, especially if you're in a battle with a tank or enemy is equipped with rocket launchers, as those can cause instant death. The levels are both indoors and outdoors. Some of the outdoor levels offer you a vehicle to spice up the gameplay a bit. You get to operate a tank, jeep, and a pontoon boat. Each vehicle has a different amount of armor and a different weapon type, so this is definitely a nice touch for opening up gameplay variety. The driving sections do not last long though, so they're more flashes of different gameplay than fully incorporated modes, and the game could have benefited from fleshing these sections out more. The levels are generally linear and don't offer much in the way of alternate pathways to choose. You also face some level hazards, such as these lasers, and you will die on the first try as you need to place yourself very specifically to activate and avoid the laser. Having to apply strategy is fine, but forcing you to die and risk restarting the game when the approach isn't obvious feels somewhat cheap. You have unlimited ammunition and can't carry more than one weapon. You do get to pick up different weapons, such as a spread shot, flamethrower, and grenade launcher. Certain levels almost require the use of a particular weapon. There's a section when you have machinery coming at you, and only the grenade launcher is strong enough to save you from single hit deaths. When dealing with basic enemies though, the flamethrower is amazing to use, as you can whip it around and clear 360 degrees of enemies without much hassle. Shock Troopers offers top-down action with an atypical control scheme. You can turn in all directions, but when you hold down fire, you start to strafe and can't rotate until you stop firing. When fighting enemies in a 360 degree field, this initially yields some frustrations if you're not used to this style of play. However, as you play the game more, it starts to feel more natural and reduces the need to get that just right angle of fire, which can be frustrating in a top-down shooter, as anyone who has played these knows the feeling of just being a degree or two off from the target, who then blows you away. You also have a dodge maneuver in your arsenal, which can be very handy. For attacks, you have your choice between your primary fire machine gun, which has unlimited ammunition, weapon upgrades, which have limited ammunition, and an alternate attack. You also whip out a melee attack automatically when things get friendly. Shock Troopers gives you a health bar over one-hit deaths, and you're definitely going to be thankful for that health bar and health power-ups. Unlike many run guns, in Shock Troopers you get to select a character from a myriad of characters, and these selections aren't simple bandana color swaps. Each character moves with a different speed, dishes out a different amount of damage, is impacted by damage differently, and has a different alternate weapon. And with 8 characters to choose from, you have some seriously solid options on how to experience the game. You can select Lonely Wolf or Team Battle Mode. Lonely Wolf has you pick a character, and that's who you are until you die. Once you die, you can then get to pick a different character if you want. Team Battle Mode lets you pick a team that allows character switching on the fly, while also sharing the same health bar. Each of these options just adds to the replayability in a great way. There are 16 levels in Shock Troopers, but the game does something pretty novel. The map is split up into 3 separate sections, each with a series of stages. You can select the section you want, so you do have some choice. Beyond that, the game only requires you to complete 2 sections, as opposed to all 3, which keeps the game length short and tight. This also makes replays of the game feel different, as you can opt for different pathway combinations. This was definitely appreciated, as it kept the game from dragging on too long. The level variety is excellent and has you fighting across 3 overall route types, including mountain, jungle, and valley. Within those, you'll experience various stages with different settings. The train level, where you walk along the top of a train fighting enemies off, is definitely a strong standout. Also worthy of mention is a fun level at the docks, and a section where planes are dropping bombs on you from overhead. In Shock Troopers, the gameplay remains essentially the same throughout the entirety of the game, except for a very cool motorcycle stage. The game focuses on strengths, but doesn't take too many risks to vary it up. Shock Troopers lets you play around with a solid selection of weapons. Beyond your primary machine gun, you have access to an upgraded machine gun, a flamethrower, a 3-way shot, a high-speed flamethrower, a rocket launcher, and others. Weapon variety is very solid, especially when combined with each character's special. Character specials range from grenades, pipe bombs, grenade launchers, exploding boomerangs, poison gas, and more. These have different effective ranges and power, so they each feel truly unique. Mercs and Shock Troopers have quite a bit of similarities regarding gameplay and level design. Both feature health bars, tons of enemies attacking you, various weapons, and both are top-down shooters. The main difference comes down to controls and replayability. Mercs has a more natural control set for those unfamiliar with unique control options, and this allows you to just jump right in. Shock Troopers controls take some time to learn, but they grow on you and are able to be picked up in a reasonable amount of time. The level designs are very closely matched for fun, but Shock Troopers offers the option of different routes and stages to beat, whereas Mercs is strictly linear. One could argue the original game option does balance that equation though. Where Shock Troopers really pulls ahead is with its various characters with legit character differences. This is a tremendous strong point that really adds fun to the game. Shock Troopers takes the win for gameplay. Regarding basic enemies and bosses, Mercs has a solid enemy variety which ranges from random foot soldiers to special forces looking types who pop out of the water to slice you up, to turrets, to troop carriers, and tanks. You also face stage hazard. All enemies are extremely dangerous should you not keep moving or have the proper weapon to deal with the situation. Enemies and projectiles can easily overwhelm the screen, making it a challenge to survive. Slowdown rears its ugly head as well, which further complicates the matter. The bosses in Mercs include a weaponized train, a fighter jet, a helicopter, a boat, and more. The final boss is a gigantic plane that's taking off from the runway, and you must stop it while it attacks you. This is cool in notion, but if you somehow only happen to have your standard machine gun, you're toast and cannot complete the mission. as you can't cause enough damage before it takes off. Shock Troopers has a wide variety of enemies too. You have foot soldiers with guns or rocket launchers, jetpack soldiers, mini tanks, turrets, and wait a second, that ain't Frosty. Shock Troopers does toss quite a few on-screen enemies at once, but you usually don't feel overwhelmed. In Shock Troopers, mid and end level bosses include armored personnel carriers, a battle with armored vehicles and a helicopter, large tanks, henchmen armed with guns, grenades, and a pink mohawk, an airship, a pair of Vega from Street Fighter claw-wearing henchmen, and more. Final boss is a battle with the big bad on top of a flying aircraft. It's a fun fight, but it doesn't really feel all that end boss-like. Basic enemy variety is solid, as is boss variety. Bosses tend to lean more towards some attempt at realism in design, and aren't really super memorable, but the fights are still a fun challenge. Once again, Mercs vs. Shock Troopers has a close battle of enemies and bosses. Both feature a good set of enemy types, which keeps either game from feeling repetitive as you get further along. Likewise, bosses on both are tied more toward reality and are fun, but neither has a boss that really stands out in the echelons of run and guns. Mercs and Shock Troopers draw a tie here for basic and boss enemy battles. Regarding art and sound design, Mercs isn't going to blow you away with its art design, but it's far from a slouch. Colors tend to lead more toward the subdued side with a large focus on grays, greens, and browns, but the game aims for a more realistic art style over color saturation. Detail level for a top-down game is very solid with the environments looking textured. You have rivets in the side panels of the metal framework, tanks with treads and various other details that make them feel real, and the character sprites have various detail work that make them stand out. You also have a pretty wicked burning enemy flame animation. Sound effects are solid, but not great. The weapons sound decent, as do the explosions. There aren't many character sounds though, so you're really just listening to the gunshots and things blowing up. The music in Mercs is a more positive note. Mercs uses the Genesis's synth strength for a very enjoyable soundtrack as you progress through the game. A highlight is the music here, just an absolute banger. Shock Troopers has a colorful and vibrant art style, with a more cartoonish style. Weapon effects, especially the flamethrower, are very cool. Character animations are very good, and having enemies drop in is a cool effect, as are the death animations. Animations also include humorous touches at times, which goes well with the cartoonish vibe. The game does include a touch of gore with blood sprays when enemies are shot too. Nothing over the top, but it does add to the death animations. Each level looks unique, and there is an excellent use of colors. Also of note, Shock Troopers uses some pretty nice artwork during the cutscene. As story isn't really a factor in this review, it isn't gonna get included as a plus, but it's certainly worth mentioning. The sound effects in Shock Troopers are excellent. Gunshots and explosions sound supremely powerful and really bring you into the actions. Enemies yell out when killed, and objects have unique sounds when hit or destroyed. The music in Shock Troopers is rock-heavy and enjoyable throughout. There aren't any standout tracks, but the music keeps you pumped with its fast-paced beats throughout. The Neo Geo obviously gives an advantage to Shock Troopers with its much stronger colors and animations. Mercs held its own with some really solid detail levels and animations, but it just can't keep up with the Neo Geo's power. Both games look very solid though, and add to their experiences. Shock Troopers really just takes the lead with sound effects. Music is a fairly close call with both games, but the sound effects are next level in Shock Troopers. It's kind of curious why the guns don't have the oomph that they should in Mercs, but it takes away from the action enjoyment a bit. Shock Troopers edges out Mercs with art and sound quality. Regarding quality of life features, Mercs is a very challenging game. You will die a ton. The enemies are overwhelming, as are the odds of the battles. There are a few cheap hits throughout the game too. You do have continues thankfully, but it's easy to go through them all, and when you go back to the beginning of the game you go. There are no save points or in-game level passwords. Thankfully, there is a level select code that can be used. The game can probably be beaten in under an hour with a skilled player, as some levels are insanely short. If you're new to Mercs, expect to spend 2 to 3 hours playing through the game. as you're going to need the time to figure out certain parts. Shock Troopers is also a challenging game and one where you are going to die quite a bit until you get the hang of the controls. Even then, some battles just have so much action and projectiles coming your way, you're just bound to die. The game does allow for unlimited continues right from where you died though, so there's no start the game over punishment to be had. There are no in-game saves or level passwords, but you really don't need them here. Shock Troopers can be beaten in approximately 1 hour. Although both games involve quite a bit of death, the more forgiving continue system of Shock Troopers makes this much more approachable. Shock Troopers also has few moments where you feel destined to die from cheap hits, which helps the game just have a more fun overall feel. Shock Troopers takes the quality of life features lead. Overall, these top-down shooters are both worth your time, but Shock Troopers is just more fun. Mercs has its difficulty wick turned up to blast, and it can feel unforgiving at times. Shock Troopers keeps a smile on your face throughout, has supreme sound effects, and offers solid replayability without the need for blood pressure medication. Shock Troopers moves on to the next round. Round 1, Match 3. Gunstar Heroes vs Contra 3. A note, this battle includes the Japanese version of Contra 3, known as Contra Spirits. Contra Spirits is essentially the same as Contra 3, with some quality of life changes, which I'll cover when discussing game difficulty. Regarding gameplay and level design, Gunstar Heroes has gameplay that follows the basics of a typical side-scrolling run and gun, but it has several properties that make it stand out. You can choose your style of controls with fixed or free shooting, which basically lets you decide between shooting in all directions from a lock spot versus running and shooting. You also get to choose your primary weapon right from the start. You can fire in all directions, jump, duck, slide as a dodge or attack, toss enemies, hang from different tiers, and double jump off a wall. The controls feel responsive and keep up with the fast-paced action. You are equipped with a numerical health rating and can pick up health items as you go along in the game. Gunstar Heroes has a rather unique set of weapon options. You have Force, Lightning, Chaser, and Fire. Each of these weapons is different from the others in strength, speed, and capabilities. Certain sections that have lots of enemies on a single tier may be better served with Lightning, which pierces through multiple enemies. Other sections with enemies bouncing around may be better served with Chaser and its homing capabilities. Beyond a unique weapon set, Gunstar Heroes lets you have 2 primary weapons. You can switch between either weapon whenever you like, but the big thing here is weapon combinations. You have a third option of combining the effects of both primaries, creating a unique result. With all of these options, the optional weapon strategies are through the roof, and each combo feels well suited to different obstacles. The levels in Gunstar Heroes generally have you traverse them from left to right, and you get to hop up and down from different tiers to effectively get to the end of the level, which adds a layer of strategy. You go through a jungle, up and down a pyramid, across an airship, through a train tunnel, and across a rooftop. Gunstar Heroes does introduce a few level nuances to keep things from feeling repetitive too. There's the section of the game where you slide down a large pyramid while battling enemies, a level where you play a bunch of mini games as you traverse a game board and use a die to determine how far you move along, a la Mario Party, before the idea of Mario Party existed, and there's a full space level shoot 'em up. The board game and shoot 'em up levels are full-fledged and well thought out additions to the game. Gunstar Heroes really helps you feel like you're part of a cartoon adventure series. Contra 3 features gameplay that follows the basics of a typical side-scrolling run and gun with a few unique options of its own. You can shoot in 360 degrees, jump, go to prone, unleash a screen-damaging bomb, hang from missiles while flex shooting gigantic guns, and do a 360-degree spinning attack. The controls are exemplary and work to handle the action extremely well. However, there's a caveat to this. Only 2/3 of the game plays this way. The other third of gameplay switches to a top-down perspective. Perhaps these sections were considered graphically impressive at the time, but there can't be any time period when these levels were actually fun. You move by using the D-pad or joystick to strafe, and rotate your character left or right by pressing L or R. You have to do this while firing your weapon, changing weapons, and navigating numerous stage hazards to have you spin or move faster like you're on a treadmill, all while avoiding numerous pits of death. The controls are more complex and extremely frustrating at best. Contra goes with the one hit and you're dead style of run and gun too, so you must tread very carefully. Contra 3's weapons also vary and include the machine gun, spread gun, flamethrower, laser gun, homing missiles, and a crush gun. You are able to carry 2 weapons at a time and switch between them on the fly. Weapons definitely add strategy to the game, as certain levels and bosses are much more approachable with the correct loadouts. The weapons have good effects and the variety is good without being overbearing. When you die, you only lose the weapon you currently have selected too, so you're able to respawn with a solid backup if you had one. Contra 3's side-scrolling levels make you feel like you're part of an action-packed alien invasion movie. You battle across war-torn cities, across a rooftop, and through an alien hive. Contra 3 varies things up a bit by bringing in a very cool motorcycle level too. There's also a short-lived tank driving section. The game also relies heavily on those sinfully awful top-down levels for variety. Contra 3's levels also include a few level hazards to avoid, such as upward shooting flame bursts, a fiery ground, and the moving ground in the top-down levels. When comparing the two games, the gameplay in Gunstar Heroes offers up just a bit more variety compared to Contra 3 without making it overly complicated. It isn't that Gunstar Heroes' extra moves make a world of a difference over Contra 3's moveset, but they're definitely noticeable and useful additions. Contra 3's trick spinning gun attack is a cool asset, but it also wasn't that impactful overall. While both feature tight controls, Contra 3's tight controllers are tossed out of the window of a speeding locomotive in those top-down sections. The level design, likewise, is superior in Gunstar Heroes. Contra 3 has some truly fantastic and cinematic levels, but devoting a third of the game to a frustrating mess really hurt Contra 3 in overall level design. And with that, Gunstar Heroes stands up as the gameplay and level design king for this matchup. Regarding basic enemies and boss battles, Gunstar Heroes only has a select few basic enemy types. There's a generic foot soldier who runs and tries to grab you, some flying soldiers, other mechanical flying devices, and upgraded foot soldiers. Enemies swarm the screen and you have a ton of fighting to do to get through the battle. The basic enemy selection is a bit limited and repetitive though, but dispatching them is still fun. Bosses are very creative and rather numerous in Gunstar Heroes. Various mechs, a papaya dance, a battle on a helicopter with an M. Bison looking type, a shape-shifting mech, a unit of hammer, dragon, and runner, and more. It also must be added that Gunstar Heroes is probably the only run and gun in this entire selection that has a muscled up boss rip a blue, protein-induced fart at you while you hang from the wing of his helicopter. Each boss's hit points are on the screen, which lets you know your progress. Each boss battle feels unique and involves the typical find the boss's pattern and or weakness. The final boss is gold and silver. This doesn't necessarily feel like the most climactic size-wise, but it comes after a gauntlet of the boss's henchmen, so you definitely feel battle weary at this point. Contra 3's enemies include a couple types of foot soldiers, mechanical centipede types, some gross looking flying bugs, hoverbike riding foot soldiers, alien foot soldiers, and some mechanical enemies. Enemies are numerous but not in the overwhelming sense. Contra 3 throws some pretty fierce and creative bosses at you, and you'll encounter them mid-level and end-level. You come across a tank, a weaponized wall, Taka the turtle, the Bosco spider, the tri-transforming wall walker, the Brother Robots Kenny, Big Fuzz, the anti-Contra battleship Rodriguez, Anthel, the Emperor Demon Gava, and more. The bosses all feel very unique and require a different attack pattern to defeat. Much like other running guns, pattern recognition is key here. Contra 3 doesn't quite inundate the player with as many enemies at once as Gunstar, which is preferred over constant craziness because the combat feels more intentional and purpose-driven. Battling enemies in either game is a joy though. These two games came equipped to brawl when it comes to boss battles. Both feature a large amount of very unique bosses since both games feature mid-level and end-level bosses. In addition, a lot of the bosses for both games have a couple pattern-driven attack types, which keeps the battles from feeling too stale. This was a very close call, but Contra 3's bosses take the edge with just being slightly more memorable. Regarding art and sound design, Gunstar Heroes goes for a cartoonish vibe with the art and setting, which suits the game extremely well. There's a great use of colors, and the levels look fantastic as you play through them. There's so much going on screen, from background animations to moving set pieces to enemy animations and the number of characters displayed on the screen. There is a hint of slowdown at times, but it was nothing egregious. Not sure what the secret sauce was that got the game to look this good and run so well back when it came out, but it had at least one heaping teaspoon of blast processing. Gunstar Heroes keeps the quality up with the music and sound effects. The weapons are a unique set and sound unique as well. There are some nice details with sounds, such as when Mr. Muscles jumps and grabs onto the helicopter blade. Or when the train comes in while going through the underground level. The music is enjoyable throughout and helps the pace of the game feel quick. Contra 3 is a rather impressive game to look at too. It aims for a darker and grittier art style, and it really nails it. The detailed sprites and backgrounds are a sight to behold. Animations are solid with things exploding nicely, things happening in the foreground and background, and boss enemy design being particularly detailed and unique. The game has a good use of colors, looks great, and each level has a unique and distinct look and feel. The top-down levels are less impressive. The use of color and detail are reduced here, and as a whole, these sections just don't look great. Contra 3 has great sound effects. The weapon and explosion sound effects sound unique and powerful. The sound effects within the levels are good too, with flame bursts sounding cool, tanks sounding authoritative, and boss attacks sounding powerful. The music in the game adds to the tension. And how could an homage to the musical score from the movie Predator not be appreciated? With that said, the music on the 2 top-down levels is not good. I guess if the level is horrible, you might as well dump your worst audio track on top of it like you're shooting a dead dog. Contra 3's art is so good that it should be used as an example of proper character sprite design. Couple that with a generous helping of great sound effects, and you have a winning combo. With that said, why does Gunstar Heroes end up being the victor here when it comes to art and sound? Those top-down levels, that's why. If those levels were excluded, Contra 3 would have taken the art and sound design win in a closely heated battle. But you can't ignore 1/3 of the game, leaving Gunstar free to take the win. Regarding quality of life features, the difficulty in Gunstar Heroes is mostly well balanced. Hits don't feel cheap, and if you play carefully and with skill, you'll be rewarded by progressing through the game. You don't have any save points or level passwords. There are level checkpoints though, so if you die, you don't always have to go right back to the beginning of the level. In addition, you have unlimited continues. The game is designed for you to complete in one sitting, but there is also a level select code. So it does make it more approachable if you don't have the 2 to 3 hours necessary to complete the game. Contra 3's difficulty is the stuff of legends. If you play it on normal, it is damn hard, and some points will have you losing your patience. Easy is more manageable and recommended for new or haven't played it in a long time type of player. You have multiple lives and a set number of continues based on difficulty level, but it will be nearly impossible to make it to the end if you haven't played the game before. There are no save points or level passwords, so this is a single sitting game. There are also no codes in the American version. The Japanese version, however, still maintains the challenge level, but it has codes for additional lives or level select. Hence, the Japanese version is the game to play if you don't have the time or patience to perfect your Contra skills. The game takes about 1 to 3 hours to beat, but this is very dependent on skill and difficulty level. Gunstar Heroes is the quality of life winner here. The game feels far more balanced and fair without feeling too easy. Overall, Gunstar Heroes takes the win over Contra 3. Both games demonstrate fantastic qualities and are memorable experiences. Contra 3 was severely bogged down by the top-down levels, which once again are 1/3 of the game. Gunstar Heroes stayed consistently entertaining and well-crafted throughout, and moves on to the next round. Round 1, Match 4, Metal Slug vs. Midnight Resistance. Regarding gameplay and level design, the gameplay in Metal Slug follows the typical side-scrolling run and gun. You can shoot in 4 directions, throw grenades, jump, and crouch, but there is no locking into the diagonal, so that's a bit annoying. You also have a melee knife attack for close-range hits, and this action deploys automatically with your attack button when an enemy is close. The controls are a bit simple, but they let you focus on the action, which gets extremely intense. To add to the intensity, this is a one-hit and you're dead run and gun. Metal Slug's weapons include the pistol, heavy machine gun, shotgun, rocket launcher, and a flame shot. The ammunition is unlimited for the pistol, but all of the others have limited ammunition. Ammunition and weapon upgrade items are rather generous though, so you may not be able to fire non-stop, but you really aren't conserving ammunition Resident Evil style either. In-game, each weapon has a very distinct feel. You'll lose any weapon option if you die though. The levels in Metal Slug have you go from left to right and along different tiers. The levels include a jungle with ruins, a beach, a rooftop, a train, a cavern, a town, and more. There's plenty of variety, which helps keep the excitement high. Metal Slug also incorporates destructible environments, which help the levels feel more interactive and fun, especially when you bring down a screen-sized barrier that's in your way. The key to the gameplay here is a near constant frenetic pace of action and fighting. Metal Slug is a very action-forward game by design, and a lot of the fun comes from not only surviving, but also delivering the chaos. Metal Slug does introduce some side-scrolling tank driving sections where you operate a tank with a gun and cannon. Beyond that, there's a fantastic section on the water where you're floating along and can run along the boat or operate a turret-style anti-aircraft gun, which you use against attacking aircraft and airborne troops. The tank feels powerful, and the boat section feels like an action-packed Michael Bay film, and in this instance, that's a compliment. Additionally, there are hostages for you to rescue. The hostages aren't hurt from your fire, so your job is to free them from the confines of their ropes by any means necessary, including shooting them off. Hey, you're a crack shot, don't question it. This actually shows that the developers knew what type of game they had. With all of the enemies' incoming fire, there's no time to carefully approach a hostage for a stealthy release. Midnight Resistance follows the traditional side-scrolling run-and-gun controls with a few caveats. You go across the screen from left to right, or right to left, shoot in all directions, jump, and crouch. The game gives you an in-game option to activate automatic firing by pressing the attack button, which means you don't have to be bothered by pressing the fire button. Normally, automatic fire isn't too necessary of an option, but Midnight Resistance makes a case for it as part of being successful at the game involves firing in the opposite direction from which you are going. This tactic allows you to continue forward progress while taking out enemies from behind, and is a necessary tactic for success. To accomplish this, you have to hold a separate button down while looking in that direction, and then you keep the button held. Overall, the control scheme does work, but it takes a little bit of time before you feel comfortable with it. Midnight Resistance is also a one-hit and you're dead style game. You're offered a selection of weapons, including your standard rifle, a shotgun, a 3-way spread gun, and a flamethrower. In addition, you have auxiliary upgrades that can be activated with your weapons, such as a nitro bomb or homing missiles. Midnight Resistance's approach to weapons is rather unique. You essentially start each level out from a gun shop where you can buy the weapon upgrades. Keys are your currency, and keys are earned by taking out enemies. This encourages you to fight and collect what the enemies drop, which can be risky at times. You can also purchase a weapon supercharger, a protective barrier, and more ammunition. This approach to weapons definitely adds a layer of strategy, as you need to consider how you're going to spend your hard-earned currency. If you die, you do lose your selected weapon. The game kindly often restarts you from the weapons room, but if you died fairly quickly, you will not have earned enough currency for any purchases. That means you now need to get through the level with your primary weapon, which can really be a struggle. The levels in Midnight Resistance vary in physical design, but not in gameplay. For the most part, you're running across levels and jumping from tier to tier. There are some levels that focus on vertical movement though, and these force you to approach the game differently. You'll find yourself going through a city, inside buildings, running through a jungle, climbing ladders, traversing through an alien structure, and even an Indiana Jones-esque chase sequence, except the boulder is replaced by a tank. The end level goes a psychological torture route, and it is definitely something to behold. If you somehow die and have to restart the level, so help you if you don't have enough funds for an upgraded gun. Midnight Resistance doesn't really offer up much in the form of alternate gameplay to mix things up. The levels do feature some hazards that you need to navigate, as well as an interesting platform shifting climb up a tree while fighting off enemies though. Midnight Resistance offers up a more reasonably paced gameplay style, compared to the balls to the wall style of Metal Slug, but the win goes to the action-packed Metal Slug here. Simple controls, fun level design, and destructible environments just have a charm to them. Regarding basic enemies and boss battles, Metal Slug has a variety of foot soldiers. Some are just hanging around, some pop out of the water like a dolphin to get you, some parachute in with rocket launchers, some have shields, and some roll giant snowballs at you. You also fight against some smaller tanks. For bosses, you have this crap-talking bald Rambo with the M60, an armored plane, a tank on bigger tank battle, and more. The final boss attacks you with rockets from an attack helicopter. The bosses are reality-based to a degree, but are obviously larger-than-life caricatures. The bosses are relatively light on strategy and are more of a dodge what you can from incoming fire and shoot everything you've got in between. Midnight Resistance has different types of foot soldiers, some which leap or army crawl at you, while others shoot at you. You also face flying troops. The basic enemy loadout is fairly limited here. There are some mid-level boss tanks, a weaponized wall that is very reminiscent to Contra, and an attack chopper. The mid-level bosses toss in a little variety considering the general lack of low-level enemy variety. Level bosses include a tank, a flight squadron battle, a definitionless human figure who shoots electricity at you, a one-eyed saw-operating monster, a battleship, and others. The final boss is a gigantic part human, part machine that spits worms at you. The boss battles are probably the least cohesive stylistically from any of the 7 other running guns in this video, although that's not really necessarily a bad thing. The battles feel epic and patterns can be learned without too much frustration. Between the two games, the general enemies have much more flair in Metal Slug compared to Midnight Resistance, which feels more repetitive. The bosses in Metal Slug feel more epic and are more fun to fight than the bosses in Midnight Resistance. However, Midnight Resistance comes in hot with bosses that require some strategy if you want to defeat them, and a few boss battles are definitely epic feeling. The pluses and minuses draw each other out here, so they receive a tie for enemy and boss battles. Regarding art and sound design, Metal Slug is a looker. The amount of detail in each level is overwhelming at times, almost requiring another playthrough to really appreciate it. Animations are incredible. Just watch this tank obliterate the second floor of this building. Walls explode out, pieces fly everywhere. The panels on the building have different levels of damage. There's running water everywhere here as you battle another tank. The Neo Geo's power is on display as you crush cars here. Burn and character animations are also incredibly strong. But beyond the display of animation power, each level just has a distinctive look with so much detail in the art. Also, if you like your games a little bloody, Metal Slug will deliver, but the gore is optional. Levels feel like fully developed environments, and that really stands out. Music in Metal Slug is done very well too. There's a militaristic and adventurous vibe to the music. It isn't the catchiest in-game music you'll ever hear, but it works well for the game. The sound effects are extremely impressive. Take this battle versus the gigantic tank here. You can hear the sound of the tracks as it moves, the charge up of the primary weapon, and the explosion of your rockets when it gets hit. Enemies scream differently, and the weapons sound great. Midnight Resistance has some decent use of color at times, but often feels like a slightly upgraded 8-bit title, not a 16-bit title. The battle versus this boss is decent, but not great looking, but the background is just awful. After the boss is cleared, this looks like Mario hit the gym, grabbed the gun, and is going to take out Bowser for good. The game did better. Just look at the fighter squadron fight. Attractive background with some detail, jets are detailed, just much better. Animations are a bit rough, but they suffice. You have running water and some janky shimmying here. An absolute high point though has to be the final boss battle. With mask or without, this boss is just so epic with such fantastic detail. The music is very synth heavy and pumps out some pretty fantastic beats. The tracks throughout are relatively similar, if not the same though. The sound effects of the guns in Midnight Resistance are solid. Although the three-way spread sounds like a supercharged bubble gun. This boss's laser shots sound lasery, so that's good. The game doesn't have a gigantic sampling of sound effects, really. Having a relatively early cycle Genesis game compete against a Neo Geo powerhouse isn't exactly fair from a hardware perspective, and Metal Slug does take the win here. Metal Slug is filled with animations and sounds that Midnight Resistance could never do, but beyond that, there's so much detail poured into every frame of the game. Midnight Resistance had its moments, like with the Flight Squadron and the final boss, though. Midnight Resistance does have a catchier song, but the music is too repetitive to really stand out. Metal Slug gets an easy victory. Regarding quality of life features, Metal Slug is righteously difficult if you're hoping to have a deathless run. There's so much going on screen and so many hits that are borderline unavoidable, but the game gives you unlimited continues, and you pick up right where you left off. There are no save points or level passwords, but you don't need them. The complete game is 45 minutes long and can easily be handled in a single sitting. There aren't any major quality of life codes, and once again you don't need them. Midnight Resistance is definitely a greater challenge than Metal Slug, given you have a set number of lives and continues. Some sections feel like you're meant to die a few times to figure things out, which means your risk of having to start the game all over again is very high. There are cheap hits at times, but generally the game feels fair. Except if you don't have the right weapon for that last level. Ugh. Just ugh. There are no save points, but there are checkpoints, so you're not always thrown back to the beginning of the level, which saves in some frustration. There is a solid quality of life code that comes in the form of a level select. If you want to experience the full game without having to rinse and repeat the game in its entirety as you learn all of the strategies to get through, then this is a massive help. Game length for Midnight Resistance lands on right about 2 hours, but it could be more if you aren't using level select. Overall, Metal Slug is the winner here. Although you will die a lot, the game really just focuses on the fun of things and is comfortable not bogging down players with constant trial and error. Midnight Resistance rewards you more for playing the game properly, but any game that threatens to send you back to the beginning gets knocked down a peg or two. Metal Slug guarantees a fun time and is light on frustration. It takes the quality of life features victory here. Metal Slug is a more enjoyable game to play over Midnight Resistance, which has some really strong qualities at times, but overall it feels like it's missing that something special that propels the game to the next level. It wasn't a complete flawless victory, but Metal Slug is clearly the victor and moves on to the next round. Round 2, Match 1. Contra vs. Gunstar Heroes. Regarding gameplay and level design, Contra's gameplay is just simpler than Gunstar Heroes. With a few weapon selections, no grenades, no dual-wielding weapons, and no melee attack. Contra doesn't offer a lot of what makes Gunstar Heroes stand out. There are moments when Contra's spread gun will have you wanting to forego the prenup and just sign on a dotted line. More simple in this case certainly does not mean bad, not even remotely. The stage variety in Gunstar Heroes is tops compared to not only Contra, but to every other game in this video. Gunstar Heroes offers fantastic run and gun fun, and then it tosses in a board game, a puzzle room, a rail riding section, and a full-on shmup level. Not only does it include these, but it also does so successfully. Contra, on the other hand, switches between side-scrolling and over-the-shoulder. The variety isn't as great, and there is a greater sense of repetition, but Contra is also a potentially much shorter game, so that repetitive feeling doesn't have much time to sink in. Additionally, both of Contra's modes are still very fun to play through as well, with just a perfect balance of action, strategy, and level design. For gameplay overall, Contra offers pure arcade action that'll be over pretty fast as long as you give yourself 30 lives. Gunstar doesn't give the arcade vibe, but when you're done you feel like you really completed an entire adventure story. Overall gameplay victory goes to Gunstar Heroes. Regarding basic and boss enemy battles, both games actually offer fairly repetitive and limited basic enemy types. It seems both games understood the mission to be get the player through the level while having fun and then unleash the full creativity with the boss. You'll definitely fight way more basic enemies in Gunstar though, as it is much more filled with action compared to Contra. The boss battles in Gunstar Heroes far outnumber those in Contra. Gunstar Heroes has some fantastic boss fights, and each one has some level of uniqueness to it. The boss battle on the outside of the helicopter in Gunstar Heroes really stands out as a fun one. Gunstar has an extremely generous amount of boss battles, probably to a point where it's a bit of an overload as some bosses are presented in boss rush style, which can be frustrating having to repeat the entire lineup to learn everyone's patterns. Contra's bosses on the other hand are gigantic monstrosities that will probably kill you straight out of the gate. Several bosses have at least 2 different attacks and different hit points, which allows you to choose to disable a function of the boss before taking the boss out altogether, which is a standout over Gunstar. Contra also doesn't force you to go from one boss to the next and to the next. Both games feature pattern recognition as the key to defeating most of the bosses. Gunstar's supreme amount of bosses and boss variety is brought down overall by several spots of boss rush presentation, and Contra's approach to strategically going after parts of the boss to disable a certain aspect adds that extra something that puts it over the top. With both having a fairly repetitive set of basic enemies, Contra walks away with the better boss battles over Gunstar Heroes. Regarding art and sound design, Contra once again has held up very well considering its age and the antiquated hardware for which it was designed. The color usage, large sprites for good and bad guys, and scenery details still enable someone to jump into the game today and experience it without finding it a complete eyesore when comparing it to Gunstar Heroes. Boss designs remain a significant highlight and work well even to this day, and it really does show the longevity of well done sprite work. The music of Contra is also enjoyable and keeps the mood throughout the entire game. The weapon sounds are solid, but beyond that, there aren't a ton of sound effects throughout the game. and the pinging sound of enemy hits isn't exactly awe-inspiring. Gunstar Heroes does end up taking victory here, but only part of the win comes from the more advanced hardware. The key here is the attention to the details while using the power of the system. Parallax scrolling, pseudo 3D looking environments, detailed backgrounds and characters, the list goes on. The effects of the various weapons and music all tie into this cartoon adventure theme. Regarding quality of life features, Contra is notoriously hard, but is much more approachable with the 30 lives code. It's still a challenge, but it's a better comparison to Gunstar Heroes as a whole, which really doesn't offer any appreciable codes and doesn't need them too much, until you reach the admittedly frustrating boss rush style sections. Gunstar Heroes goes the extra length with unlimited continues, so you don't have to ever fear getting kicked back to the beginning of the game. Both games feature a relative lack of cheap hits, which is a key factor for any good game. Contra is the short game time winner for those with a busy schedule, as it takes less than 45 minutes to beat, while Gunstar requires at least 2 hours. Overall, both games take a draw for quality of life characteristics. For this match overall, this was a supremely tough call. Contra is a true classic and deserves its spot in the echelon of Hall of Fame run and guns. But Gunstar Heroes takes the razor-thin victory, mostly by offering a bit more variety along with its fun experience. Round 2, Match 2, Metal Slug vs. Shock Troopers. Regarding gameplay and level design, Shock Troopers and Metal Slug have significant gameplay differences, with the most obvious being a top-down presentation versus side-scroller. Beyond that, Shock Troopers uses strafing controls, while Metal Slug uses a much more traditional control set. Metal Slug is immediately easier to get into because of this. For the uninitiated, Shock Troopers may feel confusing and clunky. With that said, the control scheme in Shock Troopers works well for an over-the-top presentation once you get a hang of it. The gameplay in both is a ton of fun and full of action. Shock Troopers offers up a little more of the tactical presentation that you are to dodge enemies and incoming fire over Metal Slug, which feels more on rails with enemy fire. Metal Slug is also single-hit death compared to the life bar of Shock Troopers. The life bar feels more approachable as you aren't penalized with death the instant you don't play perfectly. Metal Slug features a single character who brings you to the end, while Shock Troopers offers a stack of characters with individual looks, traits, and weapons. Shock Troopers really just sets the bar so high for replayability here. You can experience the game through a different player or even select the team option playthrough. Weapon selection is relatively similar for both, but Shock Troopers does step it up with individualized special weapons. Both feature destructible environments and plenty of bad guys to take out. Metal Slug takes the destruction up several notches with the destructible environments, as sometimes the whole scene crumbles before your eyes, which is cool visually and just adds excitement to the level design. The level design in both games is very solid overall. There aren't a ton of alternate gameplay types with either game though. Metal Slug offers the tank driving sections, and Shock Troopers offers some motorcycle driving action. This isn't necessarily a detractor, as both games are relatively short and offer amazing levels. Replay runs on Metal Slug offers more of the same great fun. Shock Troopers has path selection, which allows you to mix and match the 2/3 of its levels required to beat the game. You can switch up which levels you play and the order you play them in, which further adds to the replayability over Metal Slug. The gameplay and level design winner here is Shock Troopers. Despite a bit of a learning curve for controls compared to the pick up and play Metal Slug, the individual characters is such a strong trait that it can't be ignored. Couple that with the level and level order choices, and it's a lock. Regarding basic enemies and bosses, both games feature a solid variety of foot soldiers, tanks, and the like. There's enough variety to keep things interesting as you progress through both games. Similarly, the bosses in both games are fun, but honestly aren't all that memorable. If you play through either game and then don't touch it for a year, you probably aren't going to remember many specific bosses. Somehow though, this doesn't really detract from the overall fun of the games. Metal Slug and Shock Troopers tie in the battle for best enemies and bosses. Regarding art and sound design, both games feature some killer graphics, and a large part of that comes from the potential of the Neo Geo. Potential doesn't mean a free lunch though. Both games are just a pleasure to experience through the eyes. Colors pop off the screen, character sprites are large and detailed, and animations are abundant and expressive. These two games aren't created equal here though, and a lot of that comes from perspective. Metal Slug, being a side-scroller, allows for numerous visual layers with an exceptional amount of detail paid to the environment you're in and the backgrounds. Both games feature fantastic sound effects and very solid fast-paced music. Gunshots, explosions, and enemy grunts are very clear and pleasing to the ear in both. Shock Troopers, coming from top down, has plenty of detail work in its scenes, but it can't really have that constant layering that Metal Slug offers. Shock Troopers does offer stronger colors with amazing contrast levels, but the game just doesn't have the level of detail that Metal Slug does, which can probably be tied to the overhead perspective. Metal Slug wins in the art department. Regarding quality of life features, Metal Slug and Shock Troopers will certainly have you dying a lot. With Metal Slug you may die a bit more with one-hit deaths, but both games feature unlimited continues, which may feel like it takes away from the heavy challenge some of the other run and guns have, but it's appreciated for those with limited time to perfect play, as you can just have fun. You will die a lot, but you start right where you left off, and the only penalty is the loss of an upgraded weapon. Metal Slug is a bit harder to avoid damage, but neither game feels overwhelmingly cheap or unfair at any point. Metal Slug and Shock Troopers both take approximately 1 hour to beat. Both games tie with quality of life features, with fair feeling gameplay and unlimited continues sparing you the extra blood pressure medication for the day. Overall though, and this may be a bit of an upset, Shock Troopers takes down the beloved Metal Slug. And that's more of a compliment to Shock Troopers than a knock on Metal Slug, as Metal Slug is still a top tier run and gun. The games are so closely matched in all areas, but Shock Troopers just pulls ahead with the numerous unique choices for replayability and a very high fun factor. Final round, Shock Troopers vs Gunstar Heroes. Regarding gameplay and level design, Shock Troopers and Gunstar Heroes comes to the championship with two different styles of play, top-down versus side-scroll. Each of these games comes loaded with action, replayability, and amazing game design. Gunstar Heroes and Shock Troopers, despite having different control schemes, both offer melee attacks when close and the ability to dodge enemy attacks. Gunstar is a bit easier to pick up initially, but takes time to master the art of dodging, double jumping to attack, and applying the best combination of weapons. Shock Troopers has a steeper learning curve, but then feels more natural. It also takes some time to determine which character is best suited for certain parts of the action. Gunstar lets players apply a little more critical thinking to each level as you get to pair up two weapons and the merging of the two is unique. While Shock Troopers does have different characters with different traits and special weapons, Gunstar's approach certainly feels novel and commands a bit more thought than Shock Troopers. Both games also avoid the single hit death of many other run and guns. There are benefits to either style, but being that both of these games inundate you with enemies and enemy fire, one-hit deaths would have felt cheap. Both of these finalists give players the freedom to select the order of the levels, a standout from the rest of the competitors. However, Gunstar offers a significantly higher amount of gameplay variability. Gunstar laughs at Shock Troopers' single motorcycle mission by offering rail riding, puzzles, pyramid sliding, and a full-on shmup. Outside of gameplay variety, Gunstar does get bogged down by boss rushes though. Gunstar has all the makings of an all-star experience, but Shock Troopers gets the gameplay win here. Shock Troopers excels in the more intangible category, fun. Gunstar Heroes is fun to play and offers so much variety, but the boss rushes, which equal a surprising amount of gameplay time, brings it down a few notches. Shock Troopers may not have the varying gameplay heights, but it offers a good mix of characters and level selection, and it doesn't get bogged down in a cumbersome boss rush. Beyond that, it just felt more fun going from level to level. Regarding basic enemies and bosses, Gunstar Heroes has a rather limited amount of basic enemies. They are fun to go through, but there aren't many types to have fun taking down. Gunstar has more of a focus on bosses compared to Shock Troopers. Bosses can be major fun, but when bosses become the norm, they lose a little bit of that boss luster. Additionally, Gunstar has a bit of a repetitive basic enemy complex compared to Shock Troopers. Shock Troopers offers a solid amount of basic enemies and a somewhat forgettable boss selection. Gunstar's bosses exhibit much more creativity compared to Shock Troopers, and it does this over and over and over again. Additionally, when battling the bosses in Gunstar Heroes, you have to focus more on learning patterns to earn that victory, which compares favorably to Shock Troopers and its focus on simply dodging fire and attacking as quickly as possible. Although the boss rush presentation isn't as fun to go through, Gunstar takes the win for enemy and boss battles, as you'll face mechs, farting muscle men, and full-on machines, which just ends up being a ton of fun. Regarding the art and sound design, Shock Troopers uses the power of the Neo Geo to harness superior animations and a much stronger color presentation over Gunstar Heroes. However, Gunstar's art design is purposeful, and it very successfully meets its goals. Gunstar is a stunner of a Genesis game with a ton of detail, animation, and a great use of color. Upon quick glance, Gunstar looks outmatched, but when you're rolling through the game, you'll appreciate all the details and animations of the sprite work from both games. Shock Troopers offers stronger sound presence, with weapons sounding more powerful and explosions sounding fierce. But Gunstar aims for the space cartoon adventure and nails the sound that fits the game it was made to be. Despite having more advanced hardware, Shock Troopers and Gunstar Heroes pull a draw with regard to art and sound design. Regarding quality of life features, Shock Troopers and Gunstar Heroes both offer unlimited continues. Neither game wants you to rage quit, rather, both know the fun is in completing the game and experiencing everything there is to offer. The difficulty of both games is evenly paired, that is, until you start to hit boss rush mode on Gunstar. It isn't impossible, far from it actually, but the frustration level kicks up a few notches here as you're bound to repeat not only one boss, but numerous bosses, when you invariably will die while trying to learn those patterns. Shock Troopers takes approximately 1 hour to beat, while Gunstar Heroes takes at least 2, and possibly 3 or more, unless you've played through it over and over. This makes Shock Troopers a little more approachable for some quick fun. Neither game has level passwords or save points, but with unlimited continues, that isn't too big of a deal. With regard to quality of life features, Shock Troopers pulls a slight win over Gunstar Heroes, which really does lose those few points it needed because of the boss rush levels. Overall, the champion of this run and gun tournament, it might be an upset, is Shock Troopers. It's the best run and gun for your busy life. It offers the absolute best combination of arcade action and fun with minimal frustration. Additionally, and this was the special sauce to its victory, it throws in a solid amount of replay value with numerous characters and level options, which helps to extend the life of the rather short 1 hour runtime. Several of the games included in this tournament are excellent games, and if you haven't done yourself the favor of giving Shock Troopers a go, you should definitely do so now if run and gun games appeal to you. 8 games, 7 battles, 1 winner. There was a lot of thought and playtime put into this video. If you're of the mindset that there were some wrong calls made, let me know in the comments what your choices would have been and why. Above all else, happy run and gunning, everyone.